What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of the 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below, the best gaming related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. With Resident Evil Village coming out, guys, in the foreseeable future, that being in 2021, I am incredibly excited about it. Ever since its announcement and then, teaser trailer, reveal trailer, we got, kind of a glimpse at what this game's going to be all about. It became very quickly one of my most anticipated games of next year. And so with that, guys, I wanted to talk more about Resident Evil Village. I wanted to talk, though, is this going to be a game in which, in the Resident Evil franchise, that should build off of Resident Evil 7, or should this go back to what was like Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 5, some of the more, traditional shooters of, within the Resident Evil franchise? Let's talk about that. So, guys, if you just put in Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village within the search bar on Google, it'll bring up Resident Evil Village. And what I thought was interesting was it also puts in parentheses Resident Evil 8. And the developers over at Capcom have stated that this game is not called Resident Evil 8. It's called just Resident Evil Village. And the VI, LL, which a lot of people are putting that obviously as 8 for Resident Evil 8. It not being called that though, but they're putting it on the, on their website that it is technically Resident Evil 8 is kind of interesting. There's been a lot of talk that obviously this is kind of a continuation from 7, obviously that being Biohazard, and that this is going to be, more of the same potentially of 7, but maybe it's going to be a little bit more open. It's going to be more, kind of a shooter style typed game. But if we go over to the official website here for Resident Evil Village, because for those of you who don't know, me being a really big Resident Evil fan, I really enjoyed more than the other ones. My favorite at this point in time in the Resident Evil franchise is Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. And the reason is, guys, is because I'm a huge horror fan, and I really felt that this was the totality of what Resident Evil was all about. Something absolutely terrifying, unnerving, and gritty moments throughout the course of a story, and that was exactly what Resident Evil 7 was. Absolutely terrifying. One of the scariest games I've ever played, which I gotta say, guys, I just loved it. Now, obviously, Resident Evil 5, I loved that one. I loved the, Resident Evil 6 as well. I didn't like having to, repeat the same stuff over and over again with different characters, but I loved the concept. There were so many different, enemies that you had to go up against. So I like both styles. Resident Evil Village, though, seems like it's kind of a combination of both, which I think is really going to be an interesting ordeal. But obviously, guys, Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8, is coming out in 2021. Now, obviously, guys, the trailers and such, I think what's important, though, is we start talking about what this game's all about. So, the next generation of survival horror rises in the form of Resident Evil Village, the 8th major entry in the Resident Evil series. With ultra-realistic graphics powered by the RE engine, fight for survival as danger lurks around every corner. Years after the tragic events of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, Ethan Winters has started over with his wife Maya, finally living in peace and putting the past behind them. However, Chris Redfield, the legendary hero from previous Resident Evil games, suddenly disrupts their life, throwing a devastated Ethan into a new and twisted nightmare in search of answers. So when you hear the about here, guys, on Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village, I gotta say that this sounds like it's more of the same with Biohazard, or like as a continuation, which I'm really excited about. I like that. Now, it's been stated by Capcom, however, that there's going to be a lot more action in Resident Evil Village than there was in Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, which I'm totally okay with there being more action in Village. I just want there to be those creepy elements that were certainly within Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, because I thought that it was the most terrifying Resident Evil game, and it isn't even close in my opinion. But I also would like there, sure, to be more action within it. I think that's great, but I would like it to be a horror title with action elements. I don't want it to be an action title with horror elements like some of the other Resident Evil titles of the past. Now, obviously, guys, when we look at the images and such, the images are great. I mean, the graphics look absolutely amazing. This snowy environment, it kind of creates some very interesting environments and such. And so I'm excited about that. Chris Redfield looks definitely different. He looks different in pretty much every single game, which is a very interesting ordeal. We've talked about, is, Chris Redfield a hallucination or something? Like, is he actually not real, or is he a figment of everyone's imagination? It's a very interesting topic, guys, of conversation, which will, obviously that will be a conversation for another day. Now, here's the next thing that's interesting to me, is that this is a title obviously coming out on PS5, Xbox Series X, and then on Steam. But there are as far as players are concerned, it's one player. So what that tells me is that, at least as of right now, they're not planning any multiplayer, which is really concerning to me. I'm hoping that they do have multiplayer elements to this, whether that being co-op PvE elements where, like, maybe you're going up against waves and waves of enemies with your friends, or actual traditional multiplayer modes, which are more like PvP. More ways to come back to the game and come back to the title, I believe, is the best way to go, especially for something like Resident Evil. I think it needs to have something where you're coming back consistently. One of my biggest, issues with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard was, after you're done playing the campaign, there's not much else to do unless you're waiting for, obviously, if you're waiting for, DLC and things of that nature to come out at some point. But it's going to lose a lot of people after playing the campaign. These other ways, like multiplayer, are going to bring you back to the game over and over again. So that one player ordeal does concern me. We'll have to kind of wait and see. Now, the genre is survival horror, which has been pretty much all of the other games within the Resident Evil franchise. Now, we are getting our next update on August 2020, which, obviously, guys, we are in August, near the end of August, and I'm hoping that we obviously get a update here relatively soon regarding this, and I'll be sure to give you guys more information as it comes out. But I do believe, guys, that Resident Evil Village should build off of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. I thought that they really set this thing up really well in 7, and now moving into Resident Evil Village, I think that they've got like a great structure now to work with, where sure, you can have more action elements and such in it, but that you didn't necessarily have. But I love this direction they're going in with the Resident Evil franchise. I loved the older games as well, guys. I thought that they, overall were great. But I think that they're moving in a really good direction now. Like, they've changed things slightly to the way the gameplay, the mechanics, and things of that nature. And I think it's actually paying off. It reminds me of like God of War. God of War, guys, was one set gameplay and mechanics for years until the new God of War came out, and people were skeptical about it. But when it came out, it was met with praise alongside pretty much gamers as well as, journalists and such alike. And so what I'm getting at here is that Resident Evil is kind of taking these risks that seem to be paying off. And so I'm so excited about Village, guys. I couldn't tell you how, this game is going to be just as eerie maybe as 7, maybe not quite as much, but still a terrifying experience. When you're talking about like snowy elements and such, this just is building to a classic horror title, and I'm excited about that. But let me know, guys, in the comment section down below, do you think that Resident Evil Village should build off of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, or should it kind of go back to some of the other traditions, like the more action elements of like the past, like with Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 5? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below, and let's have a real conversation about it. And for more Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 Village content in videos, stay here with Zero TV. Hellblade is one of those games that I really enjoyed, and it kind of immerses you into this very different, strange, eerie type of world. And what I gotta say, guys, is that after beating the first game, and then, of course, watching the trailer that came out for Hellblade 2, I am very intrigued and interested to see where this story goes moving forward. So I wanted to go ahead, guys, even though we still have, there's a lot of mystery surrounding this title, I wanted to go ahead and talk about everything that we know now about Hellblade 2 with some of the recent updates that have come up. So let's talk about it. In an article, guys, written by Rami Tabari of Laptop, here's everything we know about Hellblade 2. The first Hellblade 2 trailer made its surprise debut at the Game Awards back in December 2019 alongside the reveal of the Xbox Series X. It's unclear which direction Ninja Theory will go with Hellblade 2, but we're more than excited to see Senua back in action. What was most exciting about the reveal, apart from Hellblade 2's existence, were the game's incredible visuals, which were all presented within the game's engine. Even after the previous Xbox Series X games event, Hellblade 2 is the most next-gen looking game under Xbox's belt. Now, the release date. There's no official release date for Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, and while we'd love for it to launch around the same time as the Xbox Series X, we don't think it'll show up this year or even early next year. And I gotta say, guys, I agree with this because obviously we... with that Xbox, games showcase that came out, they really didn't show us anything for Hellblade 2. They basically just stated that most of the game is based around Iceland, and they did a ton of visuals and such, and a lot of their capture in Iceland. And so that was the main thing. They didn't give us a release date. If it was coming out with the Xbox Series X as a release, launch title, we would have heard about that at the Xbox Games Showcase, but we didn't get that. This past Xbox Series X Game Showcase didn't talk about the release date of the game, but rather a release date of the second developer diary. Given that Hellblade 2 seems to be in heavy development, I predict the earliest we might see it launch is in late 2021, and I agree with that. Xbox has previously stated that gamers won't have to upgrade to new hardware for 2 years at least, as all games within that time frame will be available on Xbox One and Xbox Series X, which is absolutely great. Now, as far as Hellblade 2 gameplay, unfortunately, we haven't seen any juicy gameplay clips of Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, but we imagine that it's going to be a similar third-person action experience as Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. Ideally, we'll see more gameplay improvements, such as adding more complexity to attack combos and making combat generally more intense with a variety of new enemies. For me, guys, look, the gameplay of Hellblade 1, I liked it a lot, right? I thought it was great. My biggest issue with it was the length of the campaign. I just thought that the campaign was not long enough, and especially when there's nothing else to do outside of the campaign after you're done beating the game. I mean, all you can do is really play it over and over again, or most likely you're just going to move on to other games. So I just want there to be more things to do within this world of Hellblade, whether you're talking it being more of an open world experience, where this one, the first one was more of a semi-open world setting, but it was still relatively a narrative experience. And so that would be one thing that I would really like changed to Hellblade 2, is more of an open world scale, or at least more things to do along the journey, more things that we can do after we beat the title as a whole. And then, of course, the story. The sequel to Hellblade will once again take place in 9th century Iceland, and a recent developer diary revealed that Senua would seemingly make her way hundreds of miles across the country. In the aforementioned diary, Ninja Theory talked in depth about visiting a number of locations in Iceland and attempting to recreate those locations as authentically as possible within Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. The first game was about Senua accepting loss and coming to terms with her demons. We imagine that the second game will be about her continuing to deal with her psychosis, which would take us to a bunch of Norse mythological settings. It's entirely possible that the story of Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 will be about the character getting vengeance on the Norsemen who killed Dillion. And so this story, guys, from the first game, obviously, there was a real heavy emphasis on the voice acting. I thought that they did a really good job with that, with the voice acting and some of the visuals that they had within the first game. I thought they did a great job picking the actors and the actresses. It was a really interesting concept, having, your character, that being Senua, was kind of, dealing with psychosis, was very interesting, to say the least. A very different type of take on, when it comes to a video game. But I gotta say, guys, that overall, I'm really excited about this title. I just want there to be a number of things to do along the journey. I want there to be more things to do outside of just the campaign itself. The campaign, you could certainly play the campaign through within the first game and then go back through and play it once again and try to, get, there's certainly other things that you can do, but I just think it's really important that moving into Hellblade 2, there's definitely those differences from the first game that keep you coming back over and over again. They've got something special here, guys, in my opinion. When I look at from a graphic standpoint, from a story perspective, it's different, but I think that they really need to build off of what they did in the first one, that being Ninja Theory, and kind of moving into this next one. And I mean, look, guys, it's being released on the Xbox Series X, obviously Xbox One, and then, Microsoft Windows. And so, when you're talking more of this actually being overall more of a exclusive title, it's going to be really important that there's a bunch of ways that you can connect with this franchise outside of just the main narrative and main story. And I got to say, guys, the other thing that, I really want to see moving into Hellblade 2 is a variety of enemies that you're going up against. I thought that they did a pretty good job, a pretty nice lineup of enemies, but there was just a lot of moments throughout the course of the game where there were like significant lulls in the story, or just lulls as far as like going from point A to point B. Not a lot of action at certain points, but then when the action starts, it's like, it's almost over the top. There's just so much of it that I just feel like it needs to be more balanced, more spread out a little bit. I also think that, having puzzles is fine, but the first couple of doorways that you go through to get to Helheim in the beginning of the game, when you have to choose between those two gates or doorways and beat those demons to essentially move into the main gate to get to Helheim or go towards Helheim, I just felt that there was too many puzzles involved. I like the concept of it, but I thought there were almost just too many puzzles that you're trying to do. Instead, I think they need to balance it a little bit more between the action as well as doing certain puzzles. But, overall, guys, I thought the experience was very different. It was unique, and that was something I really enjoyed about this title. And like I said, I'm excited about the next one. I'm just hoping that they improve upon some of those things from the first game to this one, more things to do along the journey. I'm not necessarily stating, guys, that Hellblade 2 has to have multiplayer and things of that nature. I think it would be one of those games that could be cool to play co-op, being able to play like co-op missions or something where you're going up against waves and waves of enemies in a PvE kind of setting. But, just more ways, guys, to connect with this franchise I think is going to be really important. But let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys want to see in Hellblade 2? Are you guys excited about it? Let me know. Let's have a real conversation about it. And for more Hellblade 2 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. I don't think I'm alone when I say that Control, which is Remedy's newest game, is certainly one that many of us absolutely love. We can't wait to see what future maybe DLC that comes out, as well as, of course, continuations of this franchise moving forward. Well, guys, I wanted to present the question here in this segment of the show about, will we see a Control 2, and when might we actually see the continuation of Remedy's very popular Control game? So let's talk about it. In an article, guys, written by Matt Wales of Eurogamer, Remedy confirms it has 3 games in the works alongside this year's Control DLC. So, including a mystery title as well as a live service game. Control developer Remedy Entertainment has confirmed that it is currently working on and has 3 games in the works, 2 of which it's discussed previously, including its own spin on the live service model, and a third which remains a tantalizing mystery. The news comes via Remedy's latest financial report, in which CEO Tero Virtala revealed that the majority of the studio's 31.6 million euros revenue in 2019 was unsurprisingly generated by its superb paranormal shooter Control, alongside additional contributions from Alan Wake. Looking to the future, Virtala reconfirmed that one team at Remedy is currently focused on creating the 2 previously announced paid expansions for Control, with both due to release sometime this year, and that 3 other teams are also working on their own projects. The first of these is a single-player story campaign for South Korean developer Smilegate Entertainment's first-person shooter Crossfire X, an enormously popular series in China and Southeast Asia. We'll finally see the light of day on Xbox One later this year. Now, Remedy's second new title, currently going by the name of Vanguard, has also been known about in general terms, at least for some time. Now, What is it? Well, Vanguard is Remedy's attempt at creating long-term service-based multiplayer experiences that combine some of the studio's unique game features. And Vertalis says this particular project has reached the point where its first internally playable development version now exists. As for Remedy's third and currently unannounced title, all we know is that it's based on the company's own game brands and is proceeding well. Now, is that going to be the next Control 2, this unannounced title? It's hard to say, guys. Part of me thinks it is, part of me thinks it actually isn't. No additional clues were forthcoming, but the fact that publishing rights for a certain Sleepless novelist have now reverted to Remedy, coupled with solid speculation that the studio is currently laying the groundwork for his return via Control later this year. And there will likely be quite a few Alan Wake fans holding their breath for project's eventual reveal. So, let's talk about this. So, guys, obviously, I think there's a real want for Alan Wake to return. There's obviously people who want to just see the continuation of Control. For me personally, I would probably say I'd like to see a continuation of Control. Not that Alan Wake isn't good, but I would actually like to see both these games actually come out at some point. I think Remedy did a really good job with Control. Alan Wake, of course, is another one that I think has, very special, mechanics and things of that nature. It's a special title and a very passionate fan base as well. So I would actually like to see both these titles greenlit. I'm very interested to know what it is that they're working on from the standpoint of a live service model and live service game as a whole, which could be more of a multiplayer experience. I've stated, guys, that I thought Control would be really great as a multiplayer experience, whether it was like just you playing with your friends, going against like waves of enemies, like in a PvE setting, or, actually having PvP, and your characters are able to, of course, upgrade and have upgradable abilities and a lot of just earnable items and things of that nature. But I don't know if it's going to be Control that they're making as a live service game, if it's going to be one of their other, popular franchises that they're working on, or if it's going to be something completely new. Whether it's going to be a battle royale or if it's going to be just, a live service game similar to that of like the Avengers or something. It's really hard to say what it is that they're technically working on at this point, but I want to see a continuation of Control. I truly believe, guys, that Control is one of their most ambitious, but it's really one of those projects that has completely paid off for them in a major way. And I think it would be a very bad move if they decided not to continue the Control franchise moving forward. Alan Wake is another one, I think, as well, but Control, with how much popularity it had, on top of the simple fact of the matter of how many sales, and how many copies that they sold of Control, it makes way more sense to continue Control. Alan Wake, though, I would love to see a continuation of that as well. But who knows, guys? I mean, they're working on 3 different projects at this point. Obviously, you got Control and the DLC, which have already been announced. And, of course, there was some backlash with Control and, their Ultimate Edition, or one of the editions, moving into the Xbox, Series X and the PS5, which raised a lot of, backlash and such. But nonetheless, they're still working on things with Control. And so I don't think that they're done with the shelf life of Control as of yet. I would say that probably at some point next year, they very well may announce Control 2. Maybe it'll be in a couple of years. It's hard to say. But they're definitely working on some things, some of those being very much so secretive that we don't know about. Whether it's Alan Wake, whether it's Control, I would love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think in the comment section down below? Do you want to see the next unannounced title be Control, or do you want it to be Alan Wake, or would you rather just see both of them continue in some form or way? Let me know what you guys think, and for more Control 2 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. One of gaming's biggest surprises to me has been the Tomb Raider franchise. This is a franchise, guys, that in its early days, Tomb Raider has gone way back, and I didn't really ever get into Tomb Raider as a whole. I just thought that the games that have come out in the past were something that, that were enjoyable, but nothing that really was super memorable, at least to myself, until the Tomb Raider reboot came out, and it was like the origin story of Lara Croft and just Tomb Raider as a whole. And I gotta say, guys, it is a fantastic comeback story in my personal opinion, because it's really the way in which I visualized Tomb Raider being this gritty, dark story. Absolutely love the reboot and the reboot trilogy that presents the origin story. But the question is, guys, is when are we going to see the continuation of Tomb Raider moving forward? Tomb Raider 4 or whatever the next game is going to be called in this franchise. Well, guys, in an article written by Mitchell Clow of Hypable, sequel to Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Tomb Raider 4 announcement only a matter of time. A sequel to Shadow of the Tomb Raider will be announced anytime, as rumblings of Tomb Raider 4 are slowly surfacing. The Tomb Raider reboot trilogy is critically acclaimed as it has allowed Lara Croft to fully flourish on current generation consoles. Now that she has some great recent games under her belt, it's time for Miss Croft to continue on to be the full-fledged Tomb Raider that we've always known her as being. So the newest Tomb Raider game to release was 2018's Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It featured Lara's descent into a darker path where she fully leaves behind her days of doe-eyed shock and instead steps into the shoes of a cold-blooded killer. Sure, Lara still has feelings and emotions, but if an adversary crosses her path, she won't hesitate to deftly take them down. Hiding in the shadows, wearing camouflage, mud on her face, and looking a tad crazed, Lara now emerges from the bushes to savagely take down her foes with stealth and brutality. Shadow was a great way to send off Lara's origin story, but what will come next? Square Enix and development studio Eidos Montreal have a couple of options from here, and we've now caught up to the original timeline presented in the 1996 PlayStation 1 title. Now, is Shadow of the Tomb Raider the last game in the reboot series? Yes, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is indeed the last game in the reboot series, but there is likely more to come in Lara's globe-trotting adventure. Square Enix has stated that Shadow of the Tomb Raider is the cinematic finale of Lara's origin story. The important thing to note here is the language of origin story as opposed to the finale of the Tomb Raider series. The trilogy of the origin story may be completed, but Lara's adventures are just getting started. Will Tomb Raider 4 be a sequel to Shadow of the Tomb Raider? More likely than not, the Shadow of the Tomb Raider sequel will be a remake of the first game in the series. While 2007 saw a remake of the first Tomb Raider Anniversary, nearly 15 years have passed since that title released for PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, and Nintendo Wii console generation. The telling of Lara's origin has been crafted for this reboot. For the first time in the series, we have a perfectly cohesive picture of Lara Croft as a young woman. Some are suggesting that Square Enix should leave the original 3 PlayStation 1 games alone. They stand the test of time and are the ones that need the least amount of improvement. Lara's fourth adventure set in Giza, the 1999 Tomb Raider The Last Revelation, could be the logical next step in the latest reboot sequel of Miss Croft. Whether or not a remake of the 1996 PS1 title or 1999's Last Revelation is in store, one thing's for sure: the next Tomb Raider game to follow, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, will likely be a remake of one of the PlayStation 1 classics. And personally, guys, I don't want it to be a remake. I want them to continue where they left off. I feel so good about the Tomb Raider franchise right here, right now, because of what they started with that original trilogy, or not original trilogy, but the reboot trilogy. I want them just to continue from there. I don't want them to do the, go back in time here and do remakes and such. And we've seen like success with remakes, that being like the Resident Evil franchise, bringing back, Resident Evil 2 and 3 and making those remakes. And I know those were successful, but I would much rather just see a continuation, because we've already played those the older titles. I think they're going in a great direction here that started with the origin story of Lara Croft. Continue onwards though, don't continue where Shadow of the Tomb Raider left off. Keep it gritty, keep it dark, keep it just like that style, because it's so good. It reminds you of Uncharted but darker, reminds you of The Last of Us, it reminds you of some of these other titles out there. And I just think it makes so much sense to stay on the course. Don't go back and start doing remakes and such. I just don't. I think that they're ahead now. Stay ahead. Tomb Raider 4, the sequel release date announcement. Now, Square Enix recently released the definitive edition of Shadow of the Tomb Raider, meaning it's likely that a sequel announcement is just around the corner. The first title in the Tomb Raider reboot series released in 2013, and the next, Rise of the Tomb Raider, hit 2 years later in 2015. The latest title, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, released 3 years past that in 2018. With the 3-year gap between Rise and Shadow, we can assume that the Tomb Raider 4 release date will hit in 2021, with an announcement of the game sometime in early to mid 2020. We're already in mid-2020, guys, so you got to take that with what it is. But whether the next Tomb Raider game is a reboot, a remaster collection, or a new original story, fans are sure to be excited about what's next for Square Enix's telling of adventure and explorer Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider. So I got to say, guys, I would actually just like a new original story or a continuation. I mean, even I guess you could say a reboot or a soft reboot, but I would rather them do that than a remaster collection. I think a remaster collection would be cool as well, but put that alongside the reboot or the original story. Don't just do the remaster collection. Now, overall, guys, I gotta say, Tomb Raider 4, I am very excited about it to see what it's going to be all about and such. I would love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? I think we are going to be getting another Tomb Raider at some point or another in the very foreseeable future. I'll be sure to keep you guys all up to speed as that information comes out. Let me know, though, in the comment section down below, what do you guys think and what do you guys want to see out of Tomb Raider 4? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more Tomb Raider 4 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.